Hey, Bill Cates here. Are you ready to hit the bullseye? You know, in part one of this two-part video series, I talked about how to ask for referrals, and I should say introductions, in a virtual world. So today, I want to talk about getting connected, getting introduced, because we know referrals are pretty much worthless if we don't get connected, especially in today's world, right? Now, what's the best way to get connected working virtually? Well, through email. And I have 3 different types of emails that I want to run by you to show you what it would look like, how you can get your client or center of influence to introduce you with an email. Now, in this first example, your referral source, your client or your center of influence, is sending the email introduction to the prospect. And they either include you on the first line or they CC you, but it's obvious that you're being connected. The subject line can run something like this: someone you should meet, or whatever really they want to say. Message: George, I've been doing some financial work with Laura Smith. She has really opened my eyes to a few things I needed to put in place to protect my family and to secure a better retirement. I CC'd her on this email, so expect her to reach out to you sometime soon. I think you should take her call. It will be worth a few minutes of your time, if not more. Now, what's good about this is that you're included, so you know it's gone out. They've actually given a little bit of an endorsement. I think you should take her call, and that's good as well. And this is a pretty decent introduction. Now, the second example, I believe, is the most effective in most situations. I call this the email handshake because we are literally creating a digital handshake. Now, in this case, your referral source, the client or the center of influence, is again sending the email. They're including you in that email, preferably in the top line, or the CC is okay. And the subject line can read, George Jones, meet Laura Smith. George, I want you to meet Laura Smith. We've been doing some financial work together, and she's really opened my eyes to a few things I needed to put in place to protect my family and secure a better retirement. Laura, meet George Jones. George and I were roommates in college. He's a great guy until you get him out on the golf course. George, I highly recommend you speak with Laura. I'm sure it will be time well invested. Now, what's good about this is the prospect can see that the referral source, probably their friend or colleague or family member, has taken a little special time to make sure this goes through. And there's a little endorsement there. I recommend you take her call. Now, here's what I recommend you do. Create a template. Create an example of how you'd like this to go. And then you can send that to your referral source to give them a sense of what you're looking for. Now, you're going to have to coach them to change the wording a little bit. If there's something that they said to you that they really liked about what you do, then you want to try to get them to include that. But if you send an example, they will certainly get a sense of how to do this. And this is by far the best way to get introduced through an email. Now, this third option I call the client bump, and you'll see why in just a second. You are sending the email. Why? Because maybe you don't trust your prospect to get it done. Maybe they've been putting it off and this is a fallback position. But in this case, you're taking the bull by the horns. You're making it happen. But, and this is very important, you're gaining agreement from the referral source, the client or the center of influence, to add to the conversation when they see the email go through. So you can start the process, but you're still going to get some help from that referral source. So with the subject line, you want to make sure that you use the referral source's name in the subject line. The subject line of an email, the purpose of the subject line in an email is to get people to open the email, right? That's the purpose. Now, they don't know you, but they know their friend or their family member or colleague. So the subject line reads something like this: George, Bob Jones suggested I contact you. Or George, Bob Jones asked me to contact you. Something like that. Now, the message goes a little like this: George, my name is Laura Smith. I've been doing some financial work with Bob, and he asked me to reach out to you. I specialize in financial planning for fast-paced business owners and entrepreneurs like you and Bob who want to focus on what you do best, running your business and making money. Based on Bob's urging, I'd like to schedule a brief call, 10 to 15 minutes, to see if it makes sense to continue the conversation. May I send over some time slots for you to consider? Now, you're hoping that when Bob sees this email go through from you to George, that he will then add to the conversation. Yeah, George, you really should talk to Laura. She's done some great work, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you won't regret it. It'll be time well invested, et cetera. Now, hopefully that'll happen. But if it doesn't, right? If your client, your referral source drops the ball, you still have made contact with a prospect. You've got the implied endorsement, right? Bob Jones suggested I contact you. Bob asked me to call you. And so this usually works pretty well. Maybe not quite as effective as the middle one we covered, the email handshake, but it still can work. Here's the important thing. If you have someone who is willing to introduce you to someone, is willing to recommend you, or somehow suggest that they talk to you, you have to be assumptive. You know, my guess is George would prefer to hear from you before he hears from me. Let's talk about what that would look like. Let's make sure it feels comfortable for everybody and at least piques his interest in hearing from me. So I hope you found this video series helpful. Remember, the first one was how to ask for introductions in the virtual world, and then how do you get introduced in the virtual world. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts around this, please shoot them off to me. I would love to have a conversation with you on this. And so this is Bill Cates leaving you with a question. Who would you like to be introduced to today? Thanks for watching.